Welcome back to Bad Coffee.
Biblical counsel.
All right. We're back at it on the saddle again. Here we are dealing with seasonal depression as our
Yay.
topic.
Yeah.
As our topic. I personally don't suffer from wintertime seasonal depression.
That's because you're a crazy person who loves the winter more than literally any other season.
That's true. I think the winter is the greatest season, but the fall is neck and neck with it though.
Fall is pretty awesome.
Yeah. How you doing?
Doing good.
Good.
Doing good.
Okay. Good. Well, because the people want to know how you were doing, you said good.
How are you doing?
They got there. Oh, thanks. Wow, I didn't know if you cared or were going to ask or anything. I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little bit sleepy today, so, we had I'm a little bit unhinged as a result of that, but I'll try and temper that while we're officially on the air. So, tell us about seasonal depression, Mary Hannah. If you had to define seasonal depression, what would you define it as?
Ooh, that's a great question. Personally, I would say seasonal depression is feeling a depressed mood. It can be sadness or just some people experience like a lack of feeling. They don't really feel anything. The classic, you lose interest in your hobbies. You're just kind of down in the dumps for a little bit. Seasonal depression is when people experience that for a certain time period of the year, the winter, when it's colder, don't get outside as much, there's fewer daylight hours in the day. So I don't know what the statistics are, but I know it's
Higher
fairly
in the winter.
common,
Yeah.
for people to experience depression in the winter because of the winter.
Sure. Yeah, I think the daylight is a big portion of that, especially I feel really bad for people who work in maybe a warehouse or go to an office where they don't have a window. Like your most recent office didn't have a window in it, but you go there and then it's dark when you get there and it's dark when you leave.
Yeah,
I
that's
hate
the
that.
worst.
Yeah, that is pretty terrible. That is the one time where it's like, all right, winter is a little bit less superior in
Yeah.
that way. Still superior, but less superior in that way. Yeah, seasonal depression I don't think is exclusive to wintertime though. I think it is most common in wintertime because it's seasonal depression.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
The official definition is SAD, which in its own way is a little bit funny because it's seasonal affective disorder is the official definition. SAD. It's pretty good. I think they did that on purpose. Is a type of depression that typically occurs during the fall and winter months. I guess fall time to me feels like the least optimal time maybe to have it, but I guess if you know you're heading into winter, that's part of it, I would imagine, and the daylight too. The days are shorter. It's characterized by the most persistent feelings of sadness, low energy, changes in mood and behavior that coincide with the seasons. So they said it's the most common. That's kind of like the clinical definition in the winter time, but there's other times of the year like fall time. Spring doesn't feel like it would be a natural time for somebody to have it, but I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure it's possible. So with seasonal depression, you yourself have struggled with this. You want to share it all about like your experience with it and how that's been for you?
Sure. Really started struggling with it probably about 8-9 years ago now. It actually coincided with when I went through kind of a miniature health crisis before I figured out my doctors found my thyroid issue. So all of that was going on at the same time. And it had been a particularly cloudy winter in Memphis. One of the things that the winter season in Memphis is just not fun. It doesn't usually get cold enough to snow, so it's just a lot of rain, and you can experience cloud cover. I think it was literally for an entire month one year. We had cloud cover. It's like you look up at the sky and there's just that blanket of clouds. There's no sunshine. It's just rainy and cold and wet and dreary.
That's really the double whammy. Is it's just cold and wet.
Yes.
Like, it's really just you walk outside, humid, wet, cold. Not
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, not fun at all. And spent a lot of time inside. And I just remember driving down the road one day and thinking, I just want to point my van south and drive until I can see the sun.
Which sounds like a very folksy, bluesy song you would hear in the South.
Yeah. It does. It does. I just want to see the sunshine and, just feel a little bit of warmth because it felt like the weather had just sucked the life out of everything. It was just gross. And then a couple years later, I wound up getting an office job and didn't have a window. And one thing I am not good at is getting up in the mornings. So there were days, especially days when it's cloudy and dreary, you don't really get any light going into the office. And unless I purposefully like walked outside at midday or on one of my breaks, you get out at 4:30 and it's pitch black again. So it was just a really weird feeling, I would say. I also got the feeling you kind of lose like track of time when it's dark most of the time, when all you see is dark and you don't see the sun. It really throws off your schedule too. It's like it's just dark and gray and dreary all the time. So you kind of lose that sense of, okay, it's morning, it's lunchtime, time to go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you, because for me, if I'm going to get seasonally affective disorder, which we would kind of shy away from the label side of it, but if I was going to have seasonal depression, I recognize I'm in the minority. Mine would come in the summertime where it's just oppressively hot and I don't I don't want to be outside or I don't want to deal with any of that. I really hate the heat. So it's just not for me. So because of that, while I would say I have experienced it, I'll take more of a role of asking you some questions about it, knowing that the people, the crazy people will more likely align with you and it might happen in the wintertime. So what about for you when that was happening? Did you start to realize, oh, this isn't normal?
I think when it started to affect my mood over a longer period of time and my energy levels, because we all experience the occasional dreary day or even like a week of dreary days, and everybody's kind of like, it's raining, it's gross. But then the sunshine comes out again, or then something good happens and you're still kind of able to be upbeat, have a little bit of energy, just excited about the things you would normally be excited about in life. But when I noticed it being a problem was it had been, weeks and I'm still low energy. I'm still just kind of down the whole time. And then that time when I was like, I just want the sunshine, because like my family, we all, for the most part, like being outdoors, really enjoy the sunshine. So that was common for me, but the desire to just like drive to Florida spur of the moment just for the sunshine, I was like, okay, something's probably wrong here.
Yeah, give that to really drive home the point about how much your family and you love the sunshine. Give the story about your dad.
My dad's a hoot. He always has loved being outside, likes to work on cars outside, do projects outside. I remember one particular winter, I think it was the stomach bug that ran through our family. And, you're just cooped up inside for several days. And I remember as soon as he was physically well enough, he took a lawn chair and got a blanket because it's like 40, 50 degrees. It's fairly cold, but the sun was out. He literally just went and sat in the backyard in the sun to get some sunshine because he'd been cooped up inside for a couple of days.
Yeah. So when you say that you love the sun, you love the sun.
Love it.
It's part of the thing that you look forward to in the springtime, in the summertime, fall time, right? Like you just look forward to the sun. So winter can be hard for you with the downcast. So you said it affected your mood, your energy, and it didn't feel normal. Those were the times where you knew something was off, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was that like for you when you realized something's off, and how did you start to work on fixing it?
It actually took me a couple of years to kind of find a good rhythm because different things work for different people, of course. One of the things I did early on that I would encourage, anybody, if you're having feelings of depression, whether it's seasonal or not, go to your doctor. One of the things that does cause seasonal depression is just the lack of vitamin D. And so if you're vitamin D deficient, which a lot of adults are, that's something that you can easily start to remedy with your doctor's advice. Please don't go out there and buy supplements and just start taking them.
Like the Flintstones chalk. You just start eating it all.
Yeah. Oh, those were the best, but the worst. Yeah, they tasted gross.
They
The
weren't bad.
Flintstones
You're
vitamins.
smoking
Oh,
crack. They were not
it was
bad.
literally like eating chalk. It was
They were
like
amazing.
Smarties, but they took all of the sugar out of them.
Well, according to my physician, that's a good thing.
I mean, true, but at what cost? At what
They
cost?
were delicious. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, eliminating as many factors that are adding to that seasonal depression as possible. So sometimes your doctor may find something that's a physical cause for the seasonal depression as well. So go ahead and take care of that. Just make sure you're doing okay physically.
What about for you? I remember one of the biggest things was the light lamp. Can you talk about that and what that was like for you?
Yes, I did. I got a light lamp. The one I got was
Which feels like a little bit of an oxymoron because what do lamps do except give light?
That's true. It was a specific type of lamp. It actually looked like it was probably about the size of an iPad, and it would sit on a little stand, and it was very bright, like very, very bright. And it basically was designed to, I think, as much as possible, like replicate some form of sunlight. And so it really helped with
Yeah.
your circadian rhythms. Like first thing in the day, you were supposed to
What a hippie.
turn on the lamp and not stare at it. They made sure to put warnings on that. Don't stare at the light lamp.
It did look like the sun was in our bathroom when you
Yeah.
went to, it was bright.
Yeah, I would turn it on when I was getting ready for work and leave it on for a good 15, 20 minutes
It's probably what Moses' face looks like after he saw God.
after he came down off the mountain. No wonder people didn't want to look at his face. That thing was bright. But that really helped because at least it gave me the sense of, okay, it's gray outside, but I feel like it's the morning now. Like I've had that bright light that usually accompanies the start of the day if there's not a bunch of clouds out. And yeah, that's what I used it for. At first, I took it to the office, and my boss came in one morning and was like, "What is that?"
That's because the sun was in your office. That's why.
I was like, "I'm gonna start using this at home," and
Yeah.
that was the way to do it.
I kind of think that it's seasonal depression in a lot of ways is the other side of the coin to when you wake up on a rainy Saturday morning and you have the choice of sleeping in and it's good for you because you get a little bit of extra rest. Where it's like seasonal depression, you turn that coin over, you don't really necessarily have the luxury of just sleeping. It
Yeah.
probably wouldn't be good for you even if you did, and you need to get up and do stuff. So it's like the opposite of it in a lot of ways. So for you, how long did it take you to start figuring out, okay, something's wrong, I've got this plan figured with this light lamp, and then you started to see results and you started to see some changes?
Honestly, because I had so many physical factors at play that first winter that it really hit me hard, I did start to get some immediate relief as my doctors worked on my health issues. So that helped a lot. I would say it wasn't until probably, it was after we got married. So probably it took about 2 or 3 winters, I think I would say, to really get into a better rhythm of, okay, what can I do about this thing? What helps me?
Yeah. Love
Yeah.
that you said 2 or 3. I know exactly what you mean, but you said 2 or 3 winters, and it sounds like we're 500 years ago, and that's how you count the time. In 6 more winters, we'll meet up again.
Yeah.
No, yeah. No, I hear you. I feel like it was a journey for you too. So, anything else that you want to share about your experience before we kind of go to the more counseling and how we would counsel somebody's side and some practical tips? Because we'll get to the practical tips and then, some theological, biblical application to counseling. But anything from your particular experience that you wanted to share?
I would say it's very discouraging in the moment. Like you feel like I am not going to feel better until the spring when the temperatures start warming up a little bit and the sun comes out again. But the good news is you can find relief from seasonal depression. You may still experience it to a degree, but I think, as we always like to say, there is hope. There's hope for
Yeah.
relief spiritually always. But I would say also emotionally and physically, like there are things that you can do that a lot of people have found very helpful.
Yeah. Well, let's look at that a little bit. As I've kind of studied and prepared for it, this is one we've talked about depression in particular, so I'd encourage you guys to go look at that if you're struggling a little bit more consistently in year round. But honestly, a little bit of a silver bullet is that, like, remember that God has a plan for that season. And even though it might not be our desired season, it's still a season of which God has ordained and has a plan for it. Jeremiah 29:11 is often kind of taken out of context. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord." And it talks about those. But even in those seasons, God does have a good plan. We might not perceive it always as good, but it doesn't change the reality of his plan being good. And then take lies captive and replace them with truth. We've talked so much before about taking thoughts captive in moments of despair and hardship and seasonal depression. I think it is in particular important because it doesn't feel like it's just a season, but it is just a set period of time that is going to change. So making sure you're proactive about it. And then you've hit on this a lot, but like you've talked about the vitamins, vitamin D, things like that, but really like good nutrition and exercise. I know for us, like on our good days, like we just figured out there's a rock climbing gym. Very excited to go do that more. But it's important to incorporate ways that get you out of a lethargic mindset and mode. Doesn't mean you can't sit on the couch and watch TV if you're not feeling it, but if that becomes the routine and you're in the midst of seasonal hardship like this, it's not going to help you get out of it. So
Yeah.
whatever you can do to mix up good diet, good change, like we've reduced sugar, reduced grain, all that crazy stuff, or whatever, and gluten-free, dairy-free, it's a change, but it's helpful, and it's important for us to know how to do that in a way that does alter our mind and body in a tangible way, not like in a weird spiritual way to be like, oh, you have to just change your mind's pattern and your cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not what we're talking, but doing things physically and emotionally that are going to help build us up as opposed to keep us in a lethargic state. Looks like you're ready to go. You got something to say about that?
Oh, I was just thinking as you were talking, I think that you're absolutely right. Like sometimes we may view it as, well, if I just change my mindset or I change the thoughts that I'm thinking, which obviously God tells us that we are to take our thoughts captive and bring them in submission to Christ. And he tells us to think about things that are pure and lovely. But what we're really doing is just obeying God in our thought life and how we treat our bodies, how we take care of our bodies, and acknowledging that God made our bodies to need certain nutrition. We need good nutrition. We need good, healthy foods.
Yeah.
Not to say that the occasional brownie piece of cake is totally okay. God made us to enjoy the things that he's given us too.
Amen. And I enjoy it.
Yes, we do. Brownies are so good. But before I get sidetracked thinking about brownies.
Blonde brownies? Oh, baby.
Yeah. Or the ones with like the chocolate chip layer on top and then the brownie on the bottom.
Sure. I kind of hit peak brownie when I said blonde, but yeah, sure.
They're all good. They're all good. It's just acknowledging that, really our body is the temple of God. If we're a believer, we have the Spirit of God. So even if we don't feel like it, we still need to take good care of our bodies, exercising, need to take good care of our thought life. And often we find that as we submit to God and obey him, we do see those fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, even in the midst of a struggle like seasonal depression.
Yeah, and hit these last two really quickly. Don't hibernate or isolate in an unhelpful way. I think there's nothing wrong with taking a snow day or a cold day and maybe having a movie night inside or, whatever. Like just trying to not be in the gross weather. I think that's totally fine. But if that becomes the mode of which you have to do it to get through the season, you're probably hibernating or isolating in a way that's not helpful or even healthy for yourself, whether you realize it or not. And it might feel helpful or healthy, but, I would encourage you to be a little bit more proactive in that. And then pursue a thankful heart. And we see that in Colossians 3:15. This is one where I've felt a little convicted, is that I really just despise all things hot. I don't like it. It's just not my weather. And for me, I've tried to become more consistent with thanking the Lord for the weather and the day he's given us, even when I don't want that. Even when that's not the weather I would choose or the season that I would choose. It's just the truth of the matter that he is in control over the weather, and he has set that to be forth before us, and it's going to stay regardless. So if we try and, have a heart that changes towards gratitude for the fact that we saw another day, maybe we get a glimpse of the sunshine or we get a break from the heat, whatever it is, we try and be a little bit more thankful. I think those days become less heavy for us, and those days become less, debilitating when we have a string of the weather or season that we don't like, because our heart is changing towards God being the one in control. Anything about those before I move us forward?
Yeah, I think that last one is very, very important, recognizing that God has a purpose for each day.
Yeah.
God knows the weather for each day, and in his sovereign will, God has chosen, like today's pretty cloudy. He's chosen that today would be pretty cloudy here in Uxbridge, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And we can look at that and, we know that it is with purpose, that nothing that God does is without purpose, and we can be thankful for that.
Yeah, just a couple of scriptures I think for us to consider here. If somebody was with me and I was counseling them about this, a couple of things would come to mind is Romans 12:12. It says, "Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer." And I think that one of the cool things about this too is that it highlights several things. Rejoice in hope, right? Like if you're in a season of which that you feel like this weather won't change or the clouds are not going to break, you can stay in an attitude where maybe you're a little bit more dour and downcast in it, and that's not going to help you be built up in hope. Or you can choose to kind of walk in that hope, and that means being patient in tribulation. It's funny that we as humans can get so caught up in our own daily preference in lives that something like seasons can be a tribulation to us. But it's just the truth is that we might struggle in one season as opposed to the other. And how hard would it be for people if, my preferred season is a colder season, but it would be really difficult for people who love warmer weather or the sunshine all the time to live in that season. So it is through God's providence that we have these changes in seasons, and it's for our good. So even having that mindset to be patient, well, maybe this warmer weather, my mom loves that weather. You love that weather, I think that the same is true when we get to the colder side. Well, at least Christian gets his snow. So I'm just kidding. But then be constant in prayer. So when you kind of fail in that, or you're struggling to have that hope, you're struggling to have that patience, be constant in prayer, because that's going to renew that hope. It's going to renew that patience, and it's going to be you in that conversation with God. So that would be one of my silver bullets if I was counseling somebody's trying to help them understand that even this is an opportunity to grow in their gladness and their hope and their patience and their ability to be in prayer. You got any scripture you'd like to share if you were counseling somebody?
Yeah, I opened to the book of James. I've been doing a study through the book of James, and one of the things that the study book pointed out, James in chapter 5, verse, I'll start in the end of 16 into 17. Yeah. It says, "The prayer of a righteous person has great power as it is working. Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed fervently that it might not rain, and for 3 years and 6 months it did not rain on the earth. Then he prayed again, and heaven gave rain, and the earth bore its fruit." And the study I was doing actually went back to the Old Testament, to several passages. I wish I could remember where they are right now. But the Bible talks about how the Lord gives the spring and the fall rains every year. And they're the rains of the harvest that water the crops and give them food. And throughout the Old Testament, it's mentioned that the Lord brings these rains. And it was really cool because I read that a couple weeks back, and we'd started experiencing the rains in the fall. And I was like, okay, wow. Like I'd never thought about it before. Like this is a sign of God's faithfulness and God's providence, because even though I'm not a huge fan of cold, rainy weather, if I have to go outside, it's the Lord being faithful to provide for people, to provide water, because we need the rainy days occasionally.
The crops alone.
Yeah. We need to eat.
Yeah.
So that was cool to me to really gain a fresh perspective on that, a biblical perspective on those dreary, rainy days as being a gift from the Lord and not something that's just a burden.
And I think that was really good what you said too, even it's provision, right? So if you're counseling somebody, it might not, I mean, absolutely provision for the crops and things like that, but it might not even be direct provision for them, the counseling, but that doesn't lessen the importance of the provision. Not everything in a season is about us and about our
Yeah.
preferences, as much as we are often a prideful people or even a self-centered people. I think that it's important to have that perspective of, well, this provision could be exactly what something else needs or someone else needs. Who's to say what God is doing with this season, regardless of what we see or can't see or like or don't like. So I think that's really good. Kind of leads into the Ecclesiastes, which if somebody fired up this pod episode, this would probably be the one they would expect. It's Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 8, and I'll just kind of fly through it. This is a time for everything. For everything there's a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, or a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. And I love that in Ecclesiastes, the thing that he's really driving home for is that there is quite literally a time and place for everything. I think that's really biblically freeing for a lot of us, because even if you look at this, like a time to laugh and a time to weep, I think there's a lot of beauty if you do a funeral or go to a funeral and there's laughter there. Man, that does the heart so much good, right? Because it's a setting that might feel very somber and very heavy, but a little bit of levity goes a long way in its healing. So even in seasons where we don't expect something to be meaningful, a time where we don't expect something to be meaningful, maybe you're heading into the fall and you're heading into the winter, and it's a season you don't expect much good from, but that doesn't mean that God can't and won't provide much good. There is a season for everything. So I think seeking what God has for you in that season would be my charge when we reflect on some of this, because there is a time for it. And if there's a time for it, there's a purpose for it. And there's something for us in the midst of that. That might be something we like. Maybe it's something we need to grow in. But I was reading in, I think it was Ephesians 5, right before you get to the section where it gives instruction for husbands and wives. But the days are evil, and it's up to us to be faithful with the time that we have in front of us. So don't get to a season that maybe you're feeling depressed or you're feeling some hardship. Don't get to that season and miss an opportunity to grow in the Lord or to find joy and hope and patience. Take advantage of that season, even if it is a hard season. That was a lot. So you got anything there before we kind of move on?
I completely agree. I was thinking one of the benefits that I think we get from winter specifically is, we are limited into what we can do outside. Sometimes we're limited if we can even get outside if we've had a big snowstorm for a little while. And taking that time to get some rest, spend extra time with the Lord, spend extra time with our family. It may throw a wrench sometimes in our day-to-day plans, but extra time with God is always a blessing. The vast majority of us need extra rest. We're constantly running on empty because we live in a very busy world. So I think looking at it not as a hindrance, which sometimes it will be, honestly, like sometimes it will be a hindrance, sometimes it will be an annoyance because we needed to get to that appointment and we're snowed in. But also looking for those moments where it's like, okay, well, yes, I might not have gotten to do XYZ that I had on my schedule, but I have an opportunity to instead use this time for something else that's good. And that's a blessing from the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so good. Any other scripture you wanted to share before I keep going?
No, please keep going.
I've just got one last one left. It's when, and you can weigh in your pronunciation here too, but Elihu from Job. How would you pronounce his name? Is that
Elihu?
Sure. I like
but
it.
I have no idea.
Yours sounds a little bit more eloquent. I like it. He's actually responding, and he has a really great response. But part of his response, verses 6 through, we'll just do 10. Verses 6 through 10. It says, "For to the snow, he says, fall on the earth." Which already I think is beautiful. Anyways, likewise to the downpour, his mighty downpour. He seals up the hand of every man, that all men whom he made may know it. Then the beasts go into their lairs and remain in their dens. From its chamber comes the whirlwind, and cold from the scattering winds. By the breath of God, ice is given, and the broad waters are frozen fast. So it actually goes on. It doesn't just talk about the winter time. It talks about all of the seasons and God's sovereignty over it. But I chose this one because I know a lot of New Englanders in particular have a hard time with some of the ice or snow. And so my only thing that I wanted to note on this is that, like, one of the beautiful things we see in, I think, creation is God's power in the midst of the weather, whether it's a big snowstorm, whether it's, a really hot day, big rain, whatever it is, we get to look at what God has created. So one of my encouragements, whether it's an incredibly hot day, incredibly cold day, rainy, snowy, whatever it is, to look at it and know that God's power is on full display. Like, we get to look at creation in the midst of whatever the weather is, when it feels like it's going crazy, like in Tennessee. It wasn't uncommon for us to have tornadoes. We can look at it and see all of this that we perceive as chaos, but all of this weather and winds obey him. And it is subject to his sovereign dominion. So whatever he's decreed for the weather to be, it is. And we should look at it and give glory and thanks to him for his creation. The kind of caveat side is, right, when disaster strikes, right? Like, when disaster sets in and people lose their lives or major things happen, I think that we can look at that and go, oh man, like, there is tragedy in the midst of the weather and stuff. And that obviously product of the fall, that there is things like loss and tragedy in those. But we look towards the day of which we can just look at his creation and not have to worry about decay, death, and all that. So anyways, I liked that because it talks about the creation under his sovereignty. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think holding both of those in view can actually be very helpful. We live in a fallen, broken world because of sin, and that includes the weather. And sometimes weather is destructive, and we do have disasters and tragedy, but also recognizing that even though we live in a broken, sin-cursed world, God is still ultimately in control, and that brings peace, even in the midst of those scary disasters.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to give like some of the common symptoms here that we have, and then we'll talk about some practical tips as we wrap up here. So if you're feeling like, you just got persistent sadness, low energy, you're more sleepy, you're not sleeping as well, changed appetites, weight loss or gain, difficulty concentrating, making decisions, mood swings, social withdrawal. I think sometimes people can have like thoughts of, well, why, if this season lasts much longer, why is life even worth living? Things like that, can be kind of heavy. So what would be some practical ways that you would encourage people to deal with? We've looked at some counsel biblically, but what would be some practical tips that you would give people for dealing with seasonal depression?
I'll give the disclaimer again. I would always say, especially if you're experiencing physical symptoms that are out of the ordinary, that are troubling to you, talk to your doctor.
Absolutely. Yeah. We are not doctors.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, not qualified. If you are experiencing, just emotional symptoms that are hard to deal with and you're having a rough time, talk to a trusted friend, find a biblical counselor to talk to, because sometimes, we are a proud people and we don't often like to think that we can get in a rut where we need help to get out. But it happens to every one of us, where sometimes that can be seasonal depression. We are just so deep in the rut that we do need somebody to come alongside us and help us to get out of that rut and to get back on the road and say, okay, how can I move forward with this? Other than those two, which I would say are first course of action if you're having a really hard time, there are just practical things like a light lamp, one of the things that they recommend, especially for anxiety, but I think it's just helpful, period, is having a definitive schedule. I actually listened to, I can't remember where it came from, but it was a good podcast on seasonal depression, or an article. And one thing that somebody recommended that I hadn't thought of before is moving your sleep schedule back a little bit, going to bed a little bit earlier, getting up a little bit earlier, because then you will get more sunlight. Making sure that you get sunlight if the sun is out as soon as you wake up in the morning, and trying to set a really healthy pattern there, because your body will adjust to the sleep schedule. Then you get more sun. Personally, I'll put a plug in here. I love plants. And there have actually been studies that have shown that having a house plant can help boost your mood. And so that's one of the things that I did when I had a windowless office, is I found some plants that thrive in low light and low maintenance, and they actually helped. It was weird, like I didn't expect them to help that much, but just having some greenery, like there's something in there that's alive and growing and can actually be really fun and helpful. If you're bad with plants, there are plants that you basically cannot kill if you give them too much water or too little water. So I would
What
look
if
for
you
those.
pour coffee instead of water?
You wind up with this weird black goopy film on the top of the soil that your wife thinks is some new form of mold that you're growing in your office.
Well, that sounds unrelated.
And you will have to repot the plant.
Oh, okay.
It did live.
So coffee sounds
But
pretty
barely.
good. Got it.
No coffee.
Anything else?
No coffee. I would say just Google it as well, because like for me, the light lamp and the plants really helped me personally, but there are different things that people do. Also, embracing the parts of the season that you can enjoy, I would say, and look at those as gifts from God. Winter is a time where we can get extra rest. I'm a big, nice cup of hot cocoa. You love your hot coffee. So if you just...
Yeah, that's right. Hot coffee.
If you enjoy sitting and, just enjoying a warm house, drinking a hot beverage, embracing those parts of the winter that you don't get in the summer because it's too hot to turn the heat on. Or one of our friends has this adorable little, it's a heater, but it looks like a fireplace. And I think those are awesome. So things like that just, you can't enjoy that in the summer. You're gonna die of a heat stroke if you have that thing cranked up.
Yeah. Yeah. Outside heat is too much heat in the summertime, so you don't need inside heat.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all of those are really good. One of the things that I would really encourage is to take advantage of the use of the fact that people aren't outside as much, which means that you can have them over and it can be a little bit more intentional. You can have more intentional relational time because people tend to slow down in the winter a little bit more than they do throughout the rest of the year. So you can build a little bit more of a foundation for relationship, have some intentional conversation. The one caveat is holidays tend to get people busy, but in terms of going and doing things, people slow down. So have them over, be more intentional. I think when it comes to snow and stuff, just take in the beauty of it. It is beautiful. Whether or not you want it is another thing, but it is beautiful to look out and see a cascade of 7 to 8 inches of beautiful white is what I dream of. But even if it's a light dusting, you can have some beauty in the midst of that. Things like snowflakes are wonderful. Seeing kids making snowmen. It's just very classic fun and very classic things. I think there's a lot of really beautiful, simple things you can do, enjoying your warm beverage of choice. Cider, some people like eggnog, and like for me, it's hot coffee. For you, it's tea. And I enjoy tea as well, so having a nice cup of tea, but whatever you can do to enjoy the small things. I think that's some of the beauty of winter, is it gives you the opportunity to enjoy and be grateful for small things a little bit more too. Then I would encourage, make the most of it. I hate Thanksgiving, but you have Thanksgiving that's a holiday that you can build towards, make fun traditions out of that. If you celebrate Reformation Day, you can do that. Things like Christmas, build in some Christmas traditions. Make it fun in a way that is enjoying the season. That way you're not throwing the time away, but you don't have to lie to yourself, right? You don't have to force yourself to love every aspect of the season, but make the most of the season that you can. Like take your vitamins, do all that stuff, of course. But I think like even just trying to be intentional with your time with God, journaling, reading. If you're watching stuff, a lot of great Christmas movies and music, they have very good biblical themes. Even if they're not inherently Christian, they might have really good themes that you can draw from. So I think just making the most of the season in those ways too, both relationally, spiritually, I think that would be some of my encouragement as well. Anything you want to say about that before we wrap up?
I completely agree. That's one thing I had in the back of my head to say was, and I think intentional is synonymous with just being proactive about it. Don't wait until if you know it's coming, don't wait until you get in that rut.
Yeah.
Go ahead and, if you're new to trying different things, maybe, I know for me, if I wait until I'm already feeling bad, the chances of me saying, okay, let me try this different thing, like let me pick up a new crafty hobby because those are great for the winter, or puzzles or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a lot less likely to do that than if I say, before the season even starts, okay, this is my plan A. If that doesn't work out, this is plan B. Like, what are some things that I'm going to put into practice even now to make sure I'm actually doing something about this instead of just kind of letting it happen to me and, letting it be what it is.
Yeah, I think that's great, especially because if you make a list or you make a plan and you're just prepared for what is coming every year. We all have seasons that are coming that we don't like, or we would choose not to have. If you are ready with activities to go, or you're ready with even small intentional things for yourself, whether it's for your family or not, whatever, you can you can tweak that. But if you have these plans and these intentional things in place to bring you some joy, and it's some joy in the midst of a season you don't want, I think it's going to go a long way. I think for me, even looking back on seasons that I don't want, if I can find something that's going to give me joy in the midst of it, it's going to make that season a lot more bearable. And it's going to be easier to have a heart of thankfulness and gratitude to God for what He's doing in the season if I'm working hard to find the joy in the midst of it. So I think that's great. Yeah. All right, so that's our seasonal depression takes. We have a couple of emails that we will not get to today for time's sake. So we'll have that in the future. But Mary Hannah, I'm gonna thank you very much for joining us on this podcast episode and
thank you for
sharing.
Having me.
Yeah, of course. And for sharing your experience. I'll let you have the blessing of closing us out on this wonderful day.
I'm gonna do my best because once again, it's been a while. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Great job.
Thank you so much.
You did it.